How many of you know or have heard of who Clemens Food Group is? Just to get a sense, okay, that's more than we usually have. We're a little out of our element here. We were born and raised in the East, so happy to be out here in the Midwest with all of you. Just to give you kind of a background of who Clemens is, we're about a 120-year-old company, family-owned and operated. We're 6th generation strong, and we're headquartered in Hatfield, Pennsylvania. We have founded our company on 3 key pillars. We are about ethics, integrity, and stewardship. And I share this with you because I'm going to show you how we've tied that into how we're differentiating who we are in the marketplace. But essentially this means that we're going to do what we say we're going to do. We're going to do it the right way. And we are looking at the future and investing in the future. Many of you may know us in the last year because there's been a lot of discussion around us opening a plant in Coldwater, Michigan. So we have been operating for about 10 months now. It'll be a full year in September. This is changing the way that pork production is done. This facility was a greenfield facility. There's been a lot of discussion around what we're going to be able to do in terms of fresh pork, and we're going to show you today how we've tied that through to our marketing efforts and how we're taking care of all of this fresh pork we have coming at us. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about how we provide service and brand solutions to help our customers grow. So pork is our core competency at Clemens, and we actually operate a vertically coordinated go-to-market strategy. So we have family farms, we have some CFG corporate farms, and then we also work with a lot of producer partners, some of you in this room likely. We are on the forefront of animal welfare, and we support both conventional and NAE flows. From a food production standpoint, we have 3 locations: Hatfield, where we do processing; Emmaus, Pennsylvania, further processing; and then Coldwater, where it's our fresh pork processing. And then we also control our transport. So we support both live and refrigerated transportation, and we have a fleet of more than 200 units on the road. But what you may not know is the brands that we're known for. So we go to market under 2 brands primarily, Hatfield and Farm Promise. Hatfield is our conventional brand. Farm Promise is our NAE brand. And we are expanding into the Midwest, so you should become more familiar with us over the next couple of years. But those are the 2 brands that the business was built on. So with that being said, I'd like to talk to you now about how we're tying who we are and what we do and how we go to market every day internally to how we bring that to consumers. Before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about the pork consumer. So when you look at the pure demographics of the pork consumer, you see that we have a lot of our consumer in an age range of 45 to 65. So what does that mean for us? That means in a lot of instances that our core pork consumer is aging out. So I mean that from the standpoint of they're consuming less volume. So if you think about empty nesters, when they used to be buying 5 to 7 pound hams and cooking it for their family, now they're down to a 2-person household and they're consuming a lot less ham. So we've had to try to figure out how to combat that. We also look at the ethnicity breakout, and 69% of our consumer is Caucasian. So are we really relevant beyond Caucasian, and how do we create that connection to other ethnic groups to help drive pork sales? 56% of our consumer is married. 34% have children present. We play at really 2 income ranges, which is a very unique proposition for us. 38% to under $40,000 a year, with 33% over 80% or $80,000 a year. And then from a geographic standpoint, for us at Clemens, being in the Northeast and growing up in the Northeast with our business, our biggest challenge was that we were the lowest pork consumption geography. So what does this mean? For us to change our pork consumer, we have to change our thinking. And this is an example of a lot of different approaches to marketing. So over the years, I've worked with a lot of brands and a lot of companies, and, marketers, in large part, used to market to the masses. It was one message out to the masses. And it was one size fits all messaging. Well, we went from that to, oh, but we have not considered diversity. We have not considered these ethnic groups. So then we started thinking, okay, we can still have one message, but we just need to visually represent different types of people. That really didn't work. So then we moved beyond that to segmentation and targeting. And this is where a lot of companies still live today in terms of the way they market. There's nothing wrong with it, but what we're finding is the next generation consumer, the next generation pork consumer, wants more. If you talk about millennials, which we all talk about a lot, it's the me generation. They want personalization, and it's forcing a lot of companies to move to one-to-one personalization. And that's really because consumers want to feel important. They feel like they're unique, and they want to be treated as such, and they want to be understood. So for us to achieve that, we can no longer go out with one message to everyone. We have to go out with things that touch them in a unique way and become part of something they can identify with. So with that being said, as we look at some of the trends, I've got some details here on dollars and volume for the grocery channel. So this is strictly pork, 3-year trend, total U.S. grocery and Northeast. And if you look at the trend, it's not a great story. The pork category is at risk in total grocery. The pork category is at risk in total Northeast. That means our customers are at risk and our brands are at risk. So we've got to find a way to reverse this. This is based on both base and incremental sales. So when you think about what people are buying day in and day out, plus what happens when we promote pork, that's this picture. Now it's slightly different if you look at just a base sales perspective. You see a little bit of a decline, but then it turns around. So if you look at 2015 and 16, there was a decline. 2017 looked a little bit better from a base sales perspective. And then the latest 52 and 26 weeks looked a little bit different. Our volumes are looking better, but our price, our dollars, is not. So we're selling more volume for less money. We can't continue that trend. We're just taking dollars out of the category. So we have to figure out how, as an industry, we can increase consumption, increase interest in pork, increase dollars and volumes, and have them going in the same direction. So with that being said, we realized that was a huge thing for us to overcome as a company and a brand as well. So right in line with what I just showed you in the category, our brand was aging out. This is what we look like. We weren't really doing much to position ourselves to consumers and to be relevant. So we took some time to look at macro and micro trends. We took some time to understand what consumer behaviors were driving the pork category and potential for us to become relevant again. So we looked at transparency. And we know that transparency builds trust and loyalty. And we knew that 41% of consumers wanted no hormones. We knew that 33% were interested in whether or not animals were humanely raised. We knew that 78% would rather buy an American product, and we knew that 42% were raised in the USA. That was important to them. We also knew by cohort group who was willing to pay more for that attribution. So we took that and we thought about the things that we were hearing, and then we also factored in some things that we found from the most recent Power of Meat study. And here's a perspective from an actual meat consumer. It's the voice of the meat consumer. We knew that there was interest in these attributions, but as you can see here for meat, chicken, and produce, it'd be great to have more information, like just saying more than 100% grass-fed. What does it mean to compare to something that isn't? So even though we're calling out some of these things, consumers still don't understand what they mean versus not having them. So stating them, telling our story is important, but telling them what it means if they don't have them is just as important. So then we looked at the top 2 consumer label desires, and they were really around regional sourcing and raising practices. And what was interesting is, as we think about transparency, there's still some skepticism out there. Consumers still think about transparency in a way where there's a logical connection to it and there's an emotional connection to it. So you see here another voice from the meat consumer in that next generation pork consumer kind of age group. And this person thinks that food companies aren't interested in truly being transparent. They're interested in giving the appearance of transparency. So we have to overcome that as an industry as well. So some of the work that we're doing in combination with the pork board is helping us to do that. It's bringing credibility and transparency in combination to help all of us further pork. So I shared a little bit about Clemens Food Group and kind of how we go to market. We had a great story to tell, and we never told it to consumers. We never tied it and connected it to our brands. So we determined there was an opportunity to do that. And here's why that was so important, because along with transparency, that drives brand switching. So we know that 39% of people would switch to a new brand if it offered full product transparency. That's huge. That gives everybody an opportunity to explore, and we thought we could definitely capitalize on that. We also know that that drives brand loyalty. So 94% of people were more likely to be loyal to a brand that offered complete transparency. And if they tried that brand and believed in that brand, 56% would be loyal for life. These are extremely high numbers considering that loyalty is on a decline overall. Next generation consumers are not all that loyal. So if we can win this and we can connect to our brands these type of messages, we've got a real opportunity to create a conversation with consumers on a one-to-one personal level. The other thing that's really important and drove us was that transparency transcends beyond just a product purchase. So when they were asked, if you choose to switch to a specific product from a new brand because it offered greater transparency, would you also try other products from that new brand? 81% of people said yes. So if I get them on bacon, I have the opportunity to then sell them on everything, including fresh pork. So it's a huge opportunity for all of us, and one that we capitalized on for our brand. The interesting thing is that millennial moms are driving this charge. So 86% of 18 to 34-year-old moms are willing to pay more for completely transparent food. That's huge. We all think they don't have the discretionary income, but the reality is they do, and they'll make trade-offs. So they may buy generic paper towels to be able to buy a protein that they feel good about feeding their family. We don't necessarily have to compete in protein. We're competing with other categories and just trying to get them to shift their dollars and their mindset to us. We're the higher value item, and they may be willing to sacrifice on some of their other household items, which is good news and opportunity for us. What's also interesting is 73% of all respondents said that they would be willing to pay more. So it's not only millennials, there's an opportunity within every demographic group that we work with. Back to millennials for a minute, though. Millennials represent $200 billion in spending power. That's enormous. We have to be out there sharing with them the value prop of pork and our brands, because if we don't, they're going to be out there making their own determinations. They're going to be using things like social media to become educated. They're going to make decisions without us being able to impact those decisions. So, we were at a crossroads. We understand all these micro and macro trends, and we as a brand and a company were at a crossroads. We had to determine, were we going to change or become obsolete? So, we took that opportunity to retell our brand story. And we took everything that we are, everything that's inherent to the company, to the heritage, to the way that we operate, to the way that we partner, and we put it together into a way that we could deliver it to consumers that made sense, and we call it Pork with a Pledge. So Pork with a Pledge really speaks to and stands for what we've built and are as a company. So we're family-owned and American-made. We're committed to sustaining American family farms. We believe in fair wage and workforce development. We believe that charitable giving is our priority as a company. And then we factor into that how we raise our animals. So we talk about our ethically raised practices. We talk about no hormones or steroids added. Believe it or not, consumers don't know that you can't do that. So we're communicating that as part of our proposition. We talk about that we're raised without growth promotants and that we're committed to being 100% gestation crate free by 2022. And how that looks and is factored into our products now is we've told that story on our packaging, on our labels, our primary way of communicating who we are and what we do. We've tied it into our entire product line, and it's pretty consistent now, so that when you go into a store and you look at the case and you look at these products, you know what you're getting from us. We actually got consumer and shopper permission to do this. When we tested this, we actually went out and talked to current buyers. We talked to just pork buyers that didn't even know who we were as a brand. We talked to people that had lapsed and stopped buying pork. And we tested these labels and this attribution in our new brand story. And what we saw was that people gave us permission to go there. We had a 93% purchase intent. So that gave us the confidence to go further. One of the things that was really interesting, and this is out of the newest Power of Meat study as well, is that we're seeing a shift in protein back to brands. So to the protein shoppers, brands mean better quality and consistency. In a world where a lot went to private label and went to just price, this was great news for us. And it was great timing because as we were refreshing our brand and coming out with these attributes, it meant that we could go to customers and give them the confidence to take the leap. So manufacturer brands by fresh and processed. 30% of consumers want a brand for fresh and 44% for processed. Private label is 20 and 15, and no brand preference actually declined. So where that used to be a driver and they didn't care about a brand, now we're seeing that 50% of people do on the fresh side and 42% do on the processed side. And we also found that 63% of people were inclined to buy familiar brands because brands are perceived to have better quality, better value, better consistency, safety, and better shelf life. So these are the key drivers that we can capitalize on and apply to pork to bring confidence back. So we took all of this, we refreshed, we showed you that. What I didn't show you was what our case used to look like. So this is how our pork sets used to look. They were dark, lacked visual appeal. There was Hatfield branded dividers present, but everything was red. It was the sea of red. There was no claims. There was nothing visually communicated. It wasn't exciting. So we went from red to relevant. So we brightened up the shelf. We took the liberty of communicating all of the attributes that you saw, and it really changed the whole pork set. You can see now that pork is more than just a price point. So in this previous example, you can see here, huge call-outs to price. We now are moving beyond just price points to communicating the value of pork and the value of our brand to consumers. And it's made a huge impact to the entire set. That's great news because as I'm out talking to our customers, they're talking about, should we shrink the pork set? And the reality is no. Pork delivers more than any other protein. The pork consumer is more profitable and more opportunity to a retailer than any other protein. So in a time when they're thinking they should shrink pork, we're coming in and saying there's new news, there's a new story, there's a branded story, and there's bigger opportunity for you. Here's another look at some of the POS and how the shelf came together. And then we started going out and talking to the customers and the meat managers where we rolled this program out. So you're going to hear the voice of the customer in the next couple of slides. And this particular customer said the pork section clearly stands out now. It's colorful, it's fresh, it's eye-appealing, and customers are loving it. So we're achieving what we're out to achieve, and we're getting some pretty good feedback. And what you'll see is we, again, played into our story. So you see the attributes of pork with a pledge, and then we're tying to recipes and usage. So this is strictly around fresh pork, and we're telling them what to do with this fresh pork and giving them new creative inspiration. In this particular one, the customer said the POS is inviting and clean. It makes it easy for our customers to pick up on the advantages of buying Hatfield pork. And in this one, all natural stands out. Many of the customers were not aware that Hatfield fresh pork was all natural prior to the POS change, which is amazing to me because the only attribute we had on our previous packaging was all natural. But they completely missed it. And they completely missed that all fresh pork is natural. It wasn't until we changed this that people started recognizing that. So this is what our entire set looks like now, and I wish I could say that every one of our customers looked like this and the fresh pork set was this large. But in this particular instance, the actual meat buyer that rolled out this program with us told us that he believes he's at a true advantage over all of his competitive retailers in his marketplace because he did this. And I can tell you from looking at the data and looking at how his business is performing now versus prior, he's in a much better position. So with that being said, we wanted to remind consumers, so this was all great that we did the packaging and we did the in-store, but we also wanted to take it through to connecting what was happening in-store with pre-shopping preparation. So you're going to see the same look and the feel, the same attributions tied into all of our ads. It's a consistent story, just repeating to make sure that people understand the value of our brand and the value of fresh pork. We also made sure that we had enough POS and enough communication within stores for shopper engagement. So you saw above the case signs, we're talking about where does your pork come from. So again, factoring in transparency. We talked about all natural. It's playing that up, ethically raised. We introduced here antibiotics for therapeutic use. That's part of our ethical raising practice. And it's something that we started to introduce here so that consumers know that we are not administering antibiotics. It's just for therapeutic use. And then you see shelf channel strips. So we were rebuilding relevance for fresh pork as well. We had some in-store videos, and then we also, more importantly, did these on-pack usage stickers so that people understood what to do with these big, fresh cuts of pork. So great for slow cookers, great for pulled pork, great for grilling. It's helping consumers understand how to navigate the pork set. We also looked at web and social as a key and critical way to communicate this. So we've done things to help inspire folks. We've done different recipes and teasers on social media, tying it to what they should go look for in store. We've done these videos. We've done teasers around social media and some web banners, and then all of it supported by our website. So when they go to validate what we're telling them, it's all there. They can read about it. They can understand how we operate our full program. And then finally, we tied it to advertising in retailers, in-store magazines, and ad circulars and things. So we've taken the opportunity to, again, reinforce what we stand for and how we go to market. We've done farmer features, introducing them to some of our farmers, letting them know where their pork comes from. We've talked about the power of pork and how it packs protein. We've actually compared it to other alternative proteins, knowing that the next generation consumer is leaving the meat case in a lot of instances and going to dairy or center of store. We've wanted to bring them back to meat and give them confidence that their servings of pork, their servings of protein in pork are more powerful than some of the other alternate proteins that they've been consuming. And then we wanted to share with them that, you know what, we stack up against chicken. And then finally, we wanted to reinforce from a sustainability standpoint that we're committed to the areas where we work and live and serve them. So that's an example of how we brought it full circle and are reinforcing. So I will tell you this is a journey. We don't have it all figured out, but we're committed to growing the pork category, and we think this is a great first step.